presents From the Archives.
Chapter 40, Conflagration.
So, you did talk to a roommate, false?
She was in here a while ago, I guess a few months after the disappearance. In May?
Would have been, yeah.
I can have one of my assistants print up a copy of her statement if that's something you'd like to have. It's a little gruesome.
That would be great, thanks. She was always really dodgy with me when I tried to get answers out of her.
Of course. I'm recording now if you're ready to start.
Fire away.
Right. Statement of fWhip regarding his sister Gemini Tay and a series of events presumed connected to statement 0220517. Statement recorded live from subject today, September 17th, 2022. Statement begins.
Well, Gem and I were always close. Our parents got divorced when we were pretty little, and it was kind of messy. There was a whole disaster involving custody and citizenship and stuff, so we spent most of our childhoods moving around a lot, and we stuck together. A lot of my childhood memories involve the two of us sneaking off together, away from whoever was supposed to be watching us. One of the places we lived when we were younger, with our mom, had this sort of run-down old shed in the backyard, back in the corner, pressed up against the fence. I guess it was a coal shed once, from before the house got central heating. We loved it. It was like our hiding place. I especially spent a lot of time there. I was always really into tools and tinkering, and I used it as a workshop. Jem always knew if she couldn't find me anywhere else, she could probably find me there. It wasn't insulated or anything, obviously. We weren't even really supposed to be out there, since the wood was rotting and it was sort of unsafe, but you know how kids are. We figured nothing could ever hurt us. So, I took the space heater from the bathroom and ran 2 extension cords out from the house, so we could be out there when it got cold. Stupid, of course, but I just didn't think it through. It caused a fire. It was a small one, but it was enough. I remember really clearly looking out the bedroom window and seeing all the smoke, all the thick and black, and the absolute fear that set into my heart when I realized I wasn't sure where Jem was. I sprinted outside just as the shed collapsed completely, as all that old rotten wood finally gave in, and for a moment I was sure Jem had been inside. And I just lost her. Then she came out of the house behind me, and she was fine, and it was fine. And I rushed to call the fire service, but I never really forgot that feeling. We grew up, more or less. She used to like to say I never grew up at all. Eventually, she ended up staying with her dad in England while she went off to university, before he passed away, and she settled down in London after graduating. I wound up back in America and went to trade school for auto repair. We didn't see each other that often, but we called all the time and kept up with each other's lives. She always had this fascination with nature. I wasn't as interested in the outdoors as she was. Like I said, I was always more into mechanics. But even back when we were kids, I liked watching her face light up whenever she turned over a rock and found some interesting bugs underneath. After she moved away, she would always send me pictures from her hikes and camping trips and call me to tell me everything that had happened after she got home. If you've talked to False, I'm sure you already know about the circumstances of her disappearance. I remember calling her just before she left for her trip. She sounded so excited. It was only supposed to be a few days. She was supposed to be back on Monday, and she'd call me when she had service again. And she just didn't. When it was a few hours after the time she was supposed to be home, I called her. And called her. And called her. There was never any answer. The first few times I left messages, but I never got so much as a text back. And I didn't have any contact information for any of her other friends over there or her roommate, so I couldn't even call any of them to ask to check in. I knew something had to be wrong. She wouldn't just not call. She always hated to worry me. I knew if even something had gone really wrong, she would have borrowed someone else's phone, sent an email, something. But there was nothing but silence. In those days waiting to hear any news, I threw myself into work. I had a workshop in my basement where I'd work on little inventions. I had an old car down there I was piecing back together, and a few other projects, and a big forge setup for metalworking. I had it wired up to my furnace so I could, let's say, reduce some heating costs. I spent more and more time down there, just doing whatever I could to keep my hands busy. I'd had a project I was working on that was going to be a present for Gem. I'd always been making things and giving them to her, ever since we were kids. This one was supposed to be a sprinkler for our garden. And then one day, I came downstairs, and she was there. I only saw her for a moment. She was looking at my workbench, crouched down to inspect every little piece and tool, just like she had when we were kids. It was her. I know it was her. She looked just like she always had. She was wearing a shirt I'd given her. Flower print. She looked up at me and smiled. For a moment, I thought that it was really physically her. That something had happened and she'd had to leave England and come home to see me, and she was fine after all, just like when we were kids, and she'd come out of the house behind me as I stared at the burning shed. And then I took another step down the stairs and she was gone. Like she'd never been there. Like she'd been a ghost. It was the day after that Gem's roommate finally called me. She'd gotten my number off Gem's phone. She was terse, I guess, over the phone. She didn't tell me much. She only said Gem had gone missing on her trip, but I could tell she thought she was dead. It was obvious by the way she said it. She said she had reason to believe that Gem was fine until recently, but then finally realized, I guess, that she wasn't, and filed a missing persons report. I tried pressing her for detail, but she just got quieter and quieter, and her answers got shorter and shorter until I gave up. I knew there was something she wasn't telling me, and I knew I'd seen Gem. The police investigation came back saying she died in a wildfire, but they never found her body. She wasn't the only hiker to get caught in the fire, and with the size of the area burned, they'll be searching for a long time. She didn't have a will, so all her stuff went to me automatically. Our dad passed about a year ago, and we didn't have any other immediate family left. It was just me and her. And then it was just me. And her. I kept seeing her. After they released the finding, I had to fly to the UK to get her things and talk to the police. I took a red-eye back. And at one point, when I got up from my seat, I glanced down over the empty rows and saw her, sitting next to the window, staring out into the night. There were flowers in her hair. I froze. My heart jumped out of my throat and stayed there. I was waiting for her to disappear, like she had when I'd seen her in my workshop. But she just didn't. And after a moment, she glanced up at me and smiled and beckoned for me to sit down. I sat down in an empty seat next to her, slowly, like if I moved too fast, she'd startle and be gone, and I reached over to grab her hand. It was warm, almost too hot. I asked her what she was doing there. I asked her where she'd been. I told her I'd been looking for her. She said she was waiting for me. She said she wanted me to come with her. I asked her where, but she just smiled and put her head on my shoulder and didn't say anything else. It felt like there was something sharp just underneath her hair, poking into my neck. and she still felt too warm, like she had a fever. But she was solid and real and there. And when the wheels touched the runway with a jolt, and I guess I must have woken up because she was gone. I called the airline once we landed. According to them, the seat was always empty, no passenger assigned. They had no sales records for Gemini Tay. She wasn't on that plane, but I saw her there. I called false too. I didn't tell her everything, but I told her some of it. She sounded worried over the phone. She told me to ignore it if I saw her again, that it wasn't really her, and she started asking me if I had any other family I could stay with for a while, but I hung up on her instead of responding. I guess I feel sort of bad about that. She was just trying to help, but I still knew she hadn't been completely honest with me, and I was just, I don't know, not angry. I just didn't really want to hear her advice. By the time I got home with 2 suitcases of her stuff, that was all I had left of her. It was early morning. Even though I must have fallen asleep on the plane to have that dream, I felt exhausted. But at the same time, I felt like I couldn't possibly sleep. I felt like there was needles under my skin, like the whole left side of my body where she leaned on my shoulder was still too warm for comfort. And if I went to sleep, when I woke up, I'd need to start thinking about funeral plans. So, instead, I went down to my basement and worked on my little present for her until I could barely feel my hands. I don't know why I was still so focused on it. She was dead. It wasn't rational. It's just that my whole life, whenever I didn't know what to do, I'd always resorted to working with my hands to ground me. I don't even remember passing out on my workbench, but I remember waking up to the explosion. Well, you can see the burns. They're not nearly as bad as they could have been with how close I was to the furnace when it went. At the time, I don't think I even realized it hurt. My ears were ringing so much I could barely hear the fire alarms. By the time I managed to pry myself up off the ground, everything was already catching, and the basement was starting to fill with smoke. I pulled my shirt up over my face, scrambled for the stairs, and tried to breathe as little as possible. I think everyone always thinks through what they would go to save from their house first in the event of a fire. What's most important, but when it's actually happening, you can't think about anything. At least I couldn't, when it's happening to me. I could only think about getting out. I was at the back door when I remembered about the photos. All the pictures of Jem and I as kids, growing up, they were all upstairs in my room. I actually started to go for them. I knew even if I got up the stairs and found them in time, there was almost no chance I'd be able to get down again safely. But the thought of just letting them burn? I couldn't. The whole house was already burning by then. I almost went back in anyways. I probably would have, but one of my neighbors who'd run over to see where the smoke was coming from found me and pulled me away from the doorway, and I'd lost my chance. My ears were still ringing from the explosion. I don't remember much from after that, but I remember sitting on the curb outside my house as it burned, while they waited for the ambulance for me, and looking across the street, and I saw her. Jem. Again. She didn't look like how I remembered her. Not exactly. There was blood matting her hair down at the sides, and branches? Antlers? Something long and sharp coming out of either side of her head, like a crown. But at the same time, she looked exactly like how she looked on the plane, and exactly how she looked when she was alive. She smiled at me, and her smile was just the same as always, and she gestured for me to come join her. I tried to stand up, but I couldn't. I was too dizzy, and as soon as I tried, someone sat me down again, said something about I'd hurt myself worse. I barely heard them. I just stared at her until another fire truck screaming down the road broke my line of sight. And when it had passed, she was gone. And then they took me to the hospital. I was there for a week, but I don't remember much of it. I know I didn't see Gem there. Right before I was discharged, one of the nurses told me I'd been delirious for most of the time, but I kept telling the orderlies that they had to let my sister in if she came to see me. I told them she'd be worried. There was something strange about it. Even once the firefighters were there, it took more than a day to contain. Half of the block went up. They're still assessing the damages. The reason I'm here now, instead of dealing with that, is, well, maybe you've already guessed. I want to find her. She's out there somewhere. She told me she was waiting. I have this feeling, like if I don't go and find her, fires will just keep starting up around me, and I want to see her again. And I don't have anything else left anyways.
False hasn't answered any of my calls since Martin was in here, but I left her a message anyways. I've been trying to call fWhip with a couple questions about his timeline of events for the last 3 days since he gave his statement. He's not answering his phone. I suppose I can't judge.
From the Archives is a fanfic series written by Johnny 16th Days and Zephaniah Grains, inspired by the Magnus Archives and by Hermitcraft and other Minecraft series.
This chapter was performed by Marty as fWhip and Tizzy as Grian. Editing for this episode was done by CJ and Curl Manifesto. Music was composed by Noctude.
Thanks for listening.